You ever have a moment where something just clicks and you realize you're not here to play small? That's the energy we're bringing this season. Welcome to Taboo Talks with Crystal, where we get honest about the messy middle of healing, rising, and rewriting the rules. Each week, we dive into real conversations around healing, leadership, identity, and choosing to live on your own terms. No filters, no performance positivity, just truth, tools, and a whole lot of permission to take up space. Whether it's just you and me today, or I'm joined by a guest who's been through the fire and found purpose on the other side, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to Taboo Talks with Crystal, where we dive into the real, raw, and sometimes taboo topics that help us heal, grow, and break those harmful generational cycles. I'm your host, Crystal Casey, and as always, I'm so happy you're here with me because today's episode is going to stir something in you. My guest is Genine Carter, an intuitive healer, energy medicine practitioner, and host of the Heal Out Loud podcast. She blends sound healing, spiritual coaching, guided meditation, and emotion mapping to help people release trauma, embrace wholeness, and step into radical self love. She's here today to bust the myth that wanting more actually means that you're ungrateful, and to show us how desire can actually be a deep act of self love and expansion. So, if you have ever been told that you should just be happy with what you have, Janine's going to help you flip that script and show you why wanting more is not only okay, it's essential. Let's dive in. Hi, Genine. Welcome. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Crystal. That was beautiful. Yeah, I'm grateful to be here and just share with you and your community just some tips and tricks that I learned along the way on what self love means, because a lot of times we think about self love surface level or
Mhm.
just like, the more material things, and sometimes, a little bit of self care, even meditating. But I want to go a little bit deeper than that today, if that's okay.
Yeah,
And I want
the
to
mic
talk,
is yours.
thank you. I want to talk about the journey that we sometimes avoid because it looks like we are being ungrateful, and it happens in a lot of ways. Sometimes it happens where you have checked all of your boxes and you still feel this yearning inside for more, but you don't know what that more is. And a lot of times we think we need a bigger house, we need more better clothes, we need a nicer car. That
Mhm.
more is always articulated in material things because that's kind of how we've been taught and told culturally that this is what brings you joy. And what my invitation is to dare to say what fills me up. If I was on an island and things wasn't an option, what could I do to bring myself joy? What could I do to feel more at peace? What could I do to feel at one with myself? And a lot of the women that I work with has never even thought about that. So
Mhm.
imagine a world where people really thought about, and this is really my desire, a world where people think about more of being connected with all that's possible, not in the form of things. And what I mean by that is like being even okay with leaning into, I'm feeling anxious. What is this feeling trying to show me? And sometimes when you allow yourself to see things without meaning, there's a breakthrough there that lightens you and even sometimes bring you joy because you know what you considered suffering is not in vain. And so that is really what I am hoping to help people tap into.
Awesome. That's beautiful. Can you expand a little bit more on what you mean about seeing without meaning?
Seeing without meaning, what I mean is like, say for instance, if you are feeling sad, why is that sadness? It's sadness because we've told ourselves it's sadness, of course, right? But then it's like, okay, but what about the situation is sadness? So see it unfold so that you can see the layers of where it leads to. Because a lot of times the emotion that we identify with is a secondary emotion. And then
Hmm.
to get to that raw, real emotion sometimes never happen because once we give the emotion a name, then it doesn't allow us to feel into and lean into, okay, well, what does this mean for me? Instead of saying, okay, you can acknowledge, okay, this feels like sadness, but what does this mean for me? Instead of saying, yeah, I'm sad. And it goes into my feelings are, I am not my feelings are mine. So just because you're feeling something don't mean that you need to become that thing. And a lot of times we don't really say I'm feeling sad. We say I am
Hmm.
sad. So it's like now you're taking on that sadness and you're calling it your own instead of saying I acknowledge that this is a feeling that's coming over me. It's not who I am at this moment. But let me investigate what's the deeper meaning of this feeling. And as you investigate, excuse me, what the deeper meaning of the feeling is, you can even ask yourself, like, where am I holding and storing sadness in my body? And this goes for any emotion. I'm using sadness because what I'm realizing is there's a sorrow in the world right now where people are feeling grief and sadness. And then understanding the difference between grief and sadness because there is a difference you know and if you're feeling sad, it may be because you're grieving something, but the sadness comes from the grief. And then the grief comes from the loss. And then, it just trickles down. And then, so once you become an investigator of the emotion, and then you get to, oh, I'm afraid. I'm afraid because I lost something that I may not never find again. So all the while you thought you were grieving and you thought you were sad, but you're really afraid. But if you just embodied and embraced sadness, then sadness may turn into anger or depression. And all along, you were really just afraid.
Yeah, that's so true. You'll kind of cycle through the emotions and the feelings until you get to the root of what it really is, right? And I feel like it usually comes down to really just a handful of things like fear or shame, or what are some of the really deeper layers that would be the root of the feelings?
What I've come to find is the biggest one is vulnerability. And with that, people don't want to be vulnerable. We are afraid of vulnerability because then we feel exposed. And
Hmm.
once you're exposed, your worthiness shows up, you're being good enough, all of these. I mean, that's like your mental dragons just take full over when you feel vulnerable. And then, there's so many other things that come up with that. But before we even go into that, I think it's really important with even cycling through the emotions to know that in order to heal anything, we have to go through all of the elements of healing, which means when you're dealing with one single thing that is a healing process, you have to go through all of the cycles of healing in order to heal. So you have to feel the sad, you have to feel the grief, you have to feel all of those things to come to the space of letting go. So like if you skip any of them, a lot of times you're compartmentalizing that feeling that you didn't allow yourself to sit in long enough or move through properly. And what happens in that is a lot of times we go into these loops. And so where you've healed 80% of it, but or even 95%, and that last little percent seems unbearable, so you move on. And then you wind up having to come right back and start all over. So then you either are in a conscious or an unconscious loop that you keep repeating the cycle because you haven't allowed yourself to cycle through the full healing process and come to the 0 point.
Mm.
Yeah, does that make sense?
It does.
So it's really about allowing yourself to become okay with not being okay
Mm-hmm.
and know that I am separate from this experience. I am not the experience. I'm in the experience. I'm not the experience. So once you can allow yourself to see, like, oh, and even say, like, what is this teaching me? What am I learning here? Like, I remember before I even realized that this is what I was doing, and I was doing it because we're very intelligent beings, whether we identify with the intelligence or not. We're healing ourselves, we're evolving, whether we are conscious of it or not. Excuse me. And what happens is, from myself in particular, I recall when I started to ask the question, I started to realize that nothing was not a blessing for me. And when I started to realize that, instead of saying, why is this happening to me? I would say, show me the lesson and the blessing because I know it's there. I want to hurry up and get it and get through it. Like, okay, I know it's
Mm-hmm.
a lesson here. I know it's a blessing there. Instead of sitting in the sorrow, I'm going to be like, okay, what am I supposed to learn? What is the blessing from this? I want to, like, I don't want to skip any parts, but I know that it's there. So I'm going to move through them in search of the golden prize because I knew it was there. And it happens every time. And what happens is, a lot of time that we are so stuck in the sorrow that we miss the lesson and the blessing. So then the cycle repeats. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
real point. And it doesn't matter what the situation is, there's always a blessing in it, so you have to look for the blessing in it, and
And that can be a very hard pill to swallow.
yeah, in the case by case, so it's like there is no blessing in this. Okay, maybe a lesson, but there's just absolutely no blessing in this. And then that goes even a little more advanced to, what is your life purpose? Because sometimes the blessing is in who you are meant to be in this lifetime, and the awakening that's happening, not to you but for you in that moment. And
Mm,
that's where the deliciousness come in, to, am I ready to step into my purpose? And what is my purpose?
mm. That hits so deep for me, Genine. And I know you know that because we've already had talks. I 100% feel that. And backing up just a smidge to going through the cycles and sitting with it and feeling it, taking it one step further, I feel like even once you do get to zero and you understand and you recognize in the mind, in the spirit, there's the body aspect. And this is where I'm at now. right? Is as a yoga instructor, knowing that trauma is stored in the body and the body needs to work it out is how I got started as a yoga instructor, actually. And I know exactly where that trauma comes from, where it shows up, and I'm starting to connect the dots now. But if you're open to it, I would love to hear a little bit more about your story and what the shift was for you that started you on this whole journey of radical self-love.
Yes, absolutely. So there's at each stage a different story. I think I'm going to start at the beginning because I feel like that is the most turning point. It was 2 points that happened. One day I woke up and I felt very unsupported. And I felt very unsupported because I have always been a protector of my family, the matriarch of my family. I'm the youngest of my mother's children, but I've always held the older sister role. And with that, that is a lot to carry on the youngest person. You know, me and my older sister, we love hard and we hate each other even harder, but the love always supersedes. And why that is important is because it's a, you can consider it from society's point, an imbalance in our relationship because she's the big sister, but I kind of carry the big sister role and she kind of acts like my mom at times. So it's just like this array of, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that in my family dynamic, you know.
Right.
And so, like, even with my brother, you know, I help raise his children. And in that, you know, they had all the things that they experienced on why I had to help raise them. And it came to a point where I felt like I was constantly giving and not receiving anything. You know, I was in a room full of people who loved me, but I couldn't feel it. The reason I couldn't feel it is because I really didn't love myself. Yeah, I loved myself on the surface, but those layers that I'm talking about, so I was requiring something that I felt like I was so good at giving, but I couldn't receive it back even when it was being offered to me. But I couldn't see that it was being offered to me. And at times it wasn't being offered to me, and especially not in the capacity that I was giving it, and not that I was given to receive. And once I started to discover it, and I felt like, you know what, I deserve better and I'm going to demand it. I called my whole family in and I said, you know, some things are going to change. And this is my brother's children, my one child, and my spouse. And I say, you know, it's not that I love you guys any less, but I love myself more. And I want to love myself more. I desire to love myself more now. So I'm telling you this because at this point, I am willing to die as the person that I am to give birth to the person that I'm going to be. Now, I didn't use those exact words at that time. What I said was, I'm no longer going to live in one sided relationships. And I'm willing to lose whoever I need to lose because this don't feel good to me anymore. Now, in that process, what happened was there was a strong depression because my identity was wrapped up in who I was for other people. I wasn't expecting that. I'm like, oh yeah, this is over, you know. But then it's like, okay, so who are you? If you're not everything to everybody, then who are you? So that was a rude awakening for me because it's like, oh, who am I? Who am I? So then it's like, okay, what do you like to do? You do this because of the kids, you do this because of your spouse. Like, who are you though? So that was the embark on who am I? And why am I here? Like, what's my purpose that only involves me? And then it's like, oh, well, am I being selfish? So then I started to second guess my choice on not being everything for everybody, It's like, oh well,
I do know.
that's what women are supposed to do. Like, do you think you're a man?
Yeah.
Like they're the only ones that get to live and have a purpose bigger than the family. So I kind of battled with that for a little while, but I stuck to it. I said, no, I get to be happy. I get to find my happy. I get to discover what fills me up. And then I say, at the time, my daughter probably was like sixth, maybe seventh grade, so no older than 12. And she's 24 this year. And so I said, you know what? At the end of the day, what I know is when my daughter becomes the woman that I am, I want her to feel like she has permission to know that she deserves to be first above any and everybody. She needs to look at herself as a goddess, as a god that deserves to be at the top of the mountain. Because what happens in that is if you're everything for everybody and nothing for yourself, then you're really nothing for them because you're giving from such a depleted place that your best isn't even half of who you are. And
Mm,
so, even with me being, we're just going to use the word selfish because that's the understanding of it. I was still being selfless because I wanted it for myself, but I wanted it more for them because I knew at that moment. So, this is how I had to trick myself at the time. I'm going to become the best me so that I can be better for them. Ooh, this is exciting because
yep.
remember, and this is like a real whole true story. Like I had to trick because it felt so lonely being still with myself that I had to have a reason to be still with myself. So my reason became to be even more of a superwoman for everybody that I love because that was my identity was so wrapped up
Mm,
in being everything for everybody that I didn't know how to be anything for myself. So even in my search to be something for myself, I had to go back to being everything for everybody. So, ooh, the more you discover yourself, the more you can be everything for everybody. And that went on for a while until it started to feel uncomfortable again. And then I started to, but in the process, and this was the process that needed to be taken because so many layers were being revealed to me. So it's like when you think of cutting a cabbage in half, and not only is it layers, it's twists and it's turns, and I mean it's spirals on top of a loop. And this is what we all have. We all are so much like that cabbage. And life is not a spiral. It's not even, it's not pretty, it's not mapped out, it's a roller coaster ride. And when you are ready to say, okay, I'm on this ride because I signed up for it, and life is a beautiful roller coaster ride, and there's going to be highs and lows, there's going to be dips, there's going to be pivots, there's going to be falls, but at the end of the ride I'm going to get off feeling out of sorts and excited all at the same time. That is what living life to the fullest expression looks like and feels like for me. Like knowing that I'm down today and I can say, okay, what's happening for me? And once I get clear on what's happening for me, I could see where I need to go. And to go back to the initial thought pattern of like, okay, this is how it happened for me. But even now, today, I'm still taking those same rides, not so much of having to trick myself into being there for myself, but having to really be still with myself and seeing the battle at times to be still and the reasons I give myself not to be still. So it's like the thing that happens for people is like, oh my God, I'm still going through this. And I just had a client this morning that we did this little map with, and it's like a light language map. So I this is her cabbage basically.
Hmm.
So I drew her cabbage. I was asked to be shown her cabbage, and I drew her cabbage. And so I asked, where is she at in the layers right now? And where she was in the layers, it made more sense why she was feeling the way she feel. Because the thing about it is, sometimes we're just going to say there's 10 layers here. Her spiritual body is on layer 8, but her emotional and mental layer have moved all the way back to 5. So she feels so uncomfortable on 5 now because her vibration is too high to be there. And what I
Mm.
mean by that, we're just going to say, once you are emotionally regulated to a certain point, or you are like, when you went the 10th grade, but now you have to do another year of 5th grade, you're going to be like, what the fuck is happening? I'm
Hmm.
very uncomfortable here. I know all of this. I'm bored. It don't feel good to sit here. Like it feels like a punishment to be back in 5th grade when
Right.
you're, especially if you're at the top of your 10th grade class. And now you got to do a year of 5th grade. It's like, I should be teaching 5th grade. What are you guys doing to me? This is a punishment. And sometimes we allow ourselves to have that slide back. Does it mean that, oh, I'm not growing? Or, oh, sometimes we look at the slide back as a punishment. And what I want people to understand the most about it not being a punishment, there's a fragment of you that is ready to come on board that wasn't ready to come on, but your soul was still ready to evolve from the space that you were in. And that happens. So when you go back to that space, I'm like, just become a like Dora the Explorer. We're going on a treasure hunt. What did we leave behind that we need to bring up
Mm.
to where we are now? So if we really start to look at life like an adventure, and our emotions like an adventure, in what we call our trials, tribulations, what else do we call them? Blocks, all of these words we have. It doesn't matter what we've labeled them. When you start to look at where you're stalled at as, ooh, I get to discover a new version of me that needs to be healed. So it's like, oh no, I got to go through this again. Well, that attitude is an energy, and it's going to either keep us there longer, or it's going to have us going in a loop. But if you look at it like, okay, I've been here before, I can maneuver through it a little bit faster. Like, I don't
Hmm.
have to learn this because I know it. I might have missed a piece. And that's just like when you're doing a math problem. You can have the math problem right, but the breakdown is wrong. Oh, wait,
Hmm.
I missed some. I still got the right answer, but the breakdown don't, the math ain't mathing, right?
Right.
Even though the answer is right, the math still is not mathing. So you can get it wrong even though it's right. And that goes into a whole nother level that we're not even going to dive into today, but that's how it goes into right or wrong. Is there really a right or wrong, or just an opinion?
Well, let's back up just a little bit. Let's go back to outgrowing the old and stepping into the new. When we do that, when we grow, we have to leave, like you were saying, parts of ourselves behind, old beliefs, roles, identities, things that just don't fit anymore. What did you have to outgrow in order to shift into the version that you are today?
Everything and nothing all at the same time. Everything
Okay.
and nothing. And let me explain to you what that means. What I had to outgrow was the need to need. Because once I realized that I didn't need anything, because I felt like I
Mm.
needed my family, I needed my husband, I needed my children. I needed my job. I needed my income. Oh Lord, I needed that savings. Like I will lose my without this
Mm-hmm.
savings. I needed a car. I needed friends. I needed to be a business owner because there's no way I can. So there were so many needs, right? And with the needs, there's no surrender. In order to shift in the way that I desired to shift at that time, I had to surrender. But I didn't know how to surrender because if I surrender, everything is going to fall apart because I'm the head, right? But not knowing that I'm really not the one that's doing it anyway. So
Right.
the surrender is so the only thing that I had to give up was control. But giving up control is giving up everything.
Mm-hmm.
I had to give up the control of being a great friend and what that entailed and let it unfold naturally. I'll show up when I can, and when I can't, it's okay. It's okay for me to say I can't, and it doesn't make me any less of a person. And with that, the next part of the healing process was a conversation that I had with one of my mentors, who is one of the dearest friends that I have right now to this day. And it happened so organically. We were talking, and I had just took a trip for my birthday, and this happened like maybe 7 years ago, 5 years ago. This was very recent opposed to when I first started, like maybe 5 years after the journey began. um and I was telling her, oh, I did a camping trip for my birthday. It was so beautiful. I rented a camper. And she was like, you rented a camper? I was like, oh, yeah. We camped on the beach and it was so beautiful. And you know how much I love the ocean. It was the best birthday ever. And I did absolutely nothing. And da 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 da. And so she was like, but you rented a camper? And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, why is she so fixated on me renting a camper? And she was like, I own a camper. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, why didn't you just ask me to borrow it? That had never crossed my mind. And when I tell you, we were like peanut butter and jelly. And she was like, why wouldn't you ask me to use your camper? And especially because it was your birthday and you went and spent money on something that I have sitting in my
Right.
parking lot. I was like, well, I didn't want to ask you. She's like, I would have asked you. She's like, why wouldn't you ask me? And she was really hurt and offended by me not asking her. So that
Oh.
was the thing. So that why does she keep going back to me renting a camper? And so I was like, well, I don't even know why I didn't ask. I said, and the reason this is where it clicked because it crossed my mind to ask her. Not because I
Mm.
didn't have the money to ask, but I'm like, oh, she has a camper. And I'm like, oh no, I couldn't do that. It
Mm.
wasn't even a fact that I thought she would say no because I was almost sure that she would say yes, and I wasn't wrong for thinking that. But the slight mustard seed, because we're talking about faith here, right? That she would say no crumbled me into this state of
Mm.
I couldn't bear to hear no. And so I said what she was asking me because I was doing some investigation on why didn't I just ask? And so we were talking. I said, you know what? It was, and then, because I am an intuitive healer and I had done much practice at this time, but it wasn't because of that, because I've been able to see like this my whole life. I was much more aware of what I was seeing at the time. And not only was I much more aware, I was much more willing to see it. And
Mm.
so I said, you know what? And this story still brings me tears. I said, because I didn't want to hear no. And she was like, I find that hard to believe. And I'm like, no. I was like, I knew it because, like, and this is what happened to this whole new level of awakening. It wasn't because I found my identity in doing everything for everyone. I remember my grandmother and I didn't have the very much best of relationships, and I wasn't treated that well as a child, and I heard no a lot. And every time I would hear no, it would shrink me inside of myself. I mean, like I would feel like this lioness and I'm the biggest thing and on top of the world. And someone would tell me no, and I would feel like I shriveled up and almost died inside. So the thought of people telling me no, even as an adult, being this woman, raising children, and I realized at that moment, that's why I can't say no either, because the thought of me making other people feel that way. And I kept hearing, oh, no, have power and all of these things. But the thought of me telling someone no made me shrink inside, thinking that they may, now they don't have the same trauma that I have with the word no, but how do I even know that this is a trauma? Because we can't heal what we won't allow ourselves to see and know that, oh, this is a thing. So when I tell you until last weekend, this is one of the biggest breakthroughs of my lifetime, realizing the hold that the word no had on my life. Not only my ability to ask for things, because I couldn't bear, if I knew it was a slight chance of it being a no, it wasn't going to be asked. So when I wanted so much from somebody, I really didn't want it because I couldn't bear to ask for it. And when I was being so selfless, I couldn't bear not to be, because I couldn't bear to say no. So that was this battle within myself as I yearned to evolve in my self love. So you see how layered that is, though? And this
Mhm.
is from way back in childhood, like as early as 4 or 5 years old, that I can, because I was like, literally, when she said it, I was brought back to a moment in the kitchen with my grandma making potato salad. It was like a holiday. I remember like this cherry chip um cake that she used to make that they rarely sell even still in the stores. It's like a box cake. It was like the cherry chip cake with the white icing, and she made it every year in potato salad in this potato salad bowl. And she was in there cooking, and I think I wanted to help her or something. And she was like, no, oh no, I wanted the bowl. You know how you get the bowl as a child, like, here go the spoon, here go the bowl to the cake.
Uh-huh.
And so I wanted the bowl because she would always give my cousin the bowl, and I wanted the bowl. So I went in there first to ask for the bowl, and she said no and gave me like a little spoon. She did give me something, but she didn't give me what I wanted. And then she always would give it to her because she went first. So I'm like, I'm gonna make it first now. But it wasn't that, it was just she liked her more.
Mm.
And now I laugh about it because I've healed so much from that, but it's still not funny because, like, I think about what that did to me at that moment and how I carried that literally my whole life. In the worthiness, like I wasn't worthy of the bigger role or, all of these things, but I should have been grateful that I got anything and that I could ask her to share. And she was always that way, like up until the end. So, with that, I saw that little girl in that moment. Like I was literally shifted back to that moment. And I own that bowl now.
That is beautiful. Oh, wow. I love that so much.
I own that bowl now. And every once in a while on the holidays, I'll pull it out and I'll make potato salad and different things in it in honor of my grandmother. Because what I also know is that she did the best she could with what she had. And then to even take it a layer deeper, because I explained that whole story, the one cousin who we felt like grandma loved the most felt like grandma didn't love her enough, and
Mm.
without fully diving into that, because that's her story to tell, it's always, and the reason why I'm mentioning it is because perception is everything. And I saw it from my lens. And this is like how the importance, and even why I mention this, because a lot of times we're jealous of someone, but we don't know what they're moving through and how they're receiving their life. and then you go through life feeling this way about people, and you're allowing you're living life through their lenses, but you're really not. You're living them, my apologies. You're living them through your lenses, and you have no idea what their lenses look like. And why that's important is because a lot of times these triggers, these traumas, these things that we have, it's so many layers. And I'm going to keep talking about layers because the importance about self-love is to allow yourself to unfold the layers. And once you allow yourself to unfold the layers, you start to see that if you're really being honest with yourself, you're living a life that was built through the lens of others. And once you discover that, then you say, okay, let me take these glasses off and see the world for myself. And that can be you want to be in it to win it. And what is the prize? Like, what is it all for? And this is important because one of the people who I admire in the motivational world is Les Brown. And he says this quote: if you do what's easy, your life will be hard. If you do what's hard, your life will be easy. And at each stage of your life, that will mean something different to you and for you. And what it means to me is different from situation to situation, not
Right.
even time, and I'm not the woman that I was yesterday, today, and why this is important, and especially on the self healing journey, is because you have to become an observer of yourself instead of a judge of yourself, because we are afraid of the world judging us when we judge ourselves much harsher than anyone else could, because don't nobody really care that much about you unless they your parents, maybe. But when you think about it, it's like you may talk crap about somebody if you're that type of person, but if you're that critical about someone, then there is really something deep going on with you, or nothing at all going on with you, because how do you have that much time with your own mental monsters? You don't really have time to judge other people that much. We're judging ourselves way more harder than anybody else can.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Take a second, if you will, Janine, and picture the woman listening to this right now who is lost. And maybe she's keeping it together on the outside, but inside is absolutely falling apart. She's exhausted. And she doesn't want to just survive anymore. She wants to thrive. She wants to make that shift, but she doesn't know where to start. What would you say to her? How
What
can
I
she tell? How can she tell if she's missing this self-love piece? And then what is the first step she can take to start reclaiming it?
what I would say to her is welcome, because when you feel like you're missing it, you're absolutely missing it. And even when you get it, it's a vast vessel that's always growing and evolving. Because as you grow and as you learn to love yourself, it kind of goes back to that layers. You have to kind of rediscover yourself on each layer. Be gentle with yourself. That is the first thing. And where is a good place to start is looking at yourself in the mirror without not looking at yourself. Because, we look at ourselves to put on makeup. We look at ourselves like, oh, well, I'm cute, whatever we say in the mirror. But do you look at yourself and say, what do I need today? And
Mm.
just don't, like, have you ever played the game 10 seconds of uninterrupted eye contact?
Yeah.
with another person, how uncomfortable
Uh-huh.
that is. But what about with yourself? Pierce into your soul and just say, what do I need today? Then take it a step farther and tell yourself some things that you need to forgive yourself for. Tell yourself some things that you love yourself for. Tell yourself some things that you commit to yourself about. So it goes something like this. I'm looking myself dead in the eye and I'll say, Genine, I love you and you are enough. And at the beginning, just saying that, tears will roll down my eyes because I said it, but I didn't believe it. And I would say it again, Genine, I love you and you are enough. And sometimes that will be all I could get out. And then I would go back and I would say, Genine, I love you and you are enough. And I forgive you for not believing in yourself. Genine, I love you and you are enough. And I forgive you for betraying yourself, for letting others step on your heart when you knew that it wasn't okay, but you didn't feel like you were enough. I'm here to tell you that you are, and you deserve better. And I would just start just like that, and like I had to sometimes pause and cry and allow myself to feel what I was feeling. And then I would go back and I would say, Genine, I wouldn't want to rush through it because I wanted to feel what was coming up. Because sometimes that would lead to the next thing that I needed to release. Genine, you are enough. And no matter how many people told you you were dumb or stupid, those are the same people that rely on you now. You are smarter than you need to be. And I'm like, what does that mean? You're smarter than you need to be. Because this is something that was really coming up for me. And it's like, what the world sees as smart, you're so beyond that, because I have dyslexia. So I was called dumb and stupid a lot in my life. And once I was able to accept the fact that I have dyslexia and I have something that most people don't have, I started to see it as a superpower instead of a curse. Because I remember, like, my husband is very smart, but like sometimes it would be the simplest thing for me, and he would be doing it so hard. And I'm like, no, just do this. And he would be like, that's not going to work. And I'm like, just try it. And he would try it his way. And after it didn't, he tried 5 things his genius brain thought of. And then he tried my one way. And not that he thought that I was stupid, but he like, I got this. And, being a man or whatever. And then he tried it my way. And I'd be like, you're welcome. So it's like, when you allow yourself to embrace your natural gifts and talents, then they arise and evolve and grow. But sometimes we don't see our own worth and value in who we are meant to be in this lifetime because we're so much admiring the other person. Like, everybody have exactly what they need and sometimes even more. And so the more than enough was like, you have so much. And as I discovered these new layers of myself, I'm like, oh, this is more than enough. Like, I am capable of so many things. And not because it's me, it's just because who I am. It's like, oh, wow. It's like, oh, you can't, like, what I can't do, I have 15 more things that I can do. So it's like, oh, I could pay somebody to do that. Or, oh, I can find a friend to help me with that.
Yes. And that's such a powerful shift in realization, I think, because we're all like that, right? We have our strengths, we have our
We all
weaknesses.
are like that. So when I thought about being more than enough or smarter than I need to be, I'm like, what does that even mean? Because either you smart or you're not. But that's what they want us to believe. Either you're smart or you're not. Because we all are vastly smart in what we were brought here to be smart in. It's like, but will you ever tap into that? And that goes into children on a spectrum or children with differences of abilities, and being in the childcare industry, I came across parents who were so in tune, and I have more, thank God, that are so in tune to their children's differences in ability and so willing to, get them the support that they need so that they can flow and grow in whatever their difference is. But unfortunately, and this is where I hate to use the word but, you have to use the but, there are some parents who see it as like a shameful thing. And what happens in that point, and it wasn't that my mom saw me as a shameful thing. When I was growing up, dyslexia wasn't even known. So, the teachers thought I was lazy. They thought I was just bad. They didn't realize it wasn't that I couldn't learn. They couldn't teach me because they didn't know how. So
Hmm.
that became a thing as well. And why this is important is because the more you accept yourself, you pull forth the people who are meant to support you, because you're stepping online with who you're supposed to be in this life by accepting yourself. So once you accept the mission of who you're meant to be in this life, then your tribe shows up to support you.
Hmm.
So you see how it all comes together. So it's like when a parent accepts that their child has a different inability, then they find the team to support them. When a person accepts, like I've had some of the most amazing tutorings, like you wouldn't believe. I was an adult when I fully really learned to read. And again, at the time when I was learning to read, I wasn't learning to read because I had lived my whole childhood not knowing how to read. So I knew how to maneuver around. It wasn't a healthy way, but it was the way that I knew. And my desire to learn to read was because I wanted to read my daughter bedtime stories. So I'm like, oh, I have to learn how to read because, well, read better. And then, because with my type of dyslexia, some days is good days where I could read really good. Like I could read on the eighth grade level today. Tomorrow might be a second grade level. So it was that as well. But my desire to even learn to read was because I wanted to read for my daughter. And with that, when I got ready, when I tell you the floodgates open, I went through a program called Read San Diego, and it's a program through the library, and I'm pretty sure it's some kind of library program in every area for someone who may be having some of these same issues. The local library have phenomenal tutoring programs and programs to help adult education and literacy. And every time, and I would kind of fall in and out of it, because I was running a business, I was becoming a mom and being a mom. So I had a lot going on. But every time I was like, okay, I'm ready to move to that next level, I got a tutor that was life changing for me. In my very first literacy, well, the very first tutor was a guy who actually worked at the library. And, there's a lot of different people who come through there. So because like I said, I'm very articulate in a lot of ways. He couldn't match my reading level with my intellectual level, because normally it's not that way. At this time, I was running my own business, I was in boardrooms being the best speaker in the boardroom, but then I had this little secret that I didn't want anyone to know. And it really held me back in life because I could have got very farther and I don't have any regrets, but I'm saying this because the importance to understand that the fear that I had of not being enough hindered me from being much more. So, like, what are you holding yourself back from? And that is really why I'm saying this. And I was always more than enough. I just didn't know it. So that's again where that more than enough came in. And you'll hear what you need to hear to awaken the DNA that's dormant in you for this next chapter. So once you allow your intuition to be turned on and you allow yourself to pause on your negative and play on your positive thoughts, they're not only thoughts. The more you say them to yourself, you're awakening your DNA. Like you're literally having a soul expansion. And that goes into the voice and words. You know how they say words or spells, and even more than being spells, the more you hear something, the words have a vibration that is a code being awakened in you for this next chapter of your life. You know how, like, it just all of a sudden one day I woke up and I was this way, and I had the courage. And it's like you don't go from 0 to 100, but sometimes you can, but you build this courage. And it's like you hear that trigger word that reminds you who you are. And once you're reminded of who you are, and that is what the mirror work do in the speak, and that's why looking isn't enough. You have to actually speak over yourself and reawaken yourself to the person that is buried inside. Those words awaken them, the forgiveness, the allowing yourself, and then the commitments that you make to yourself. I commit to myself from this day forward, I will no longer play small. I commit to myself that from this day forward, I will take one small action to being the next version of myself. Not the better version of myself, but the next version of myself. Why not the better? Because I am enough right now.
Hmm. Oh, I love that. That is beautiful. Transformational. You hit me a couple of times with the "Whew," and I love it. I appreciate it so much. We are starting to wind down, but before we wrap up, is there anything else that you haven't had a chance to share that is on your heart? And also, where can people find you and connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Yes, absolutely. The one thing that I didn't touch on, we touched on a lot, and the time went by so fast. I feel like we just got here.
I know.
Funny how time flies when you're having fun. The one thing that was really shifting for me that I'm gonna go with, because there's so many things, it's like hard to choose, but what's coming up is my biggest breakthrough in my life. Remember, I told you they always become the biggest breakthrough in my life. It just happened 2 weeks ago, like 2 weekends ago, not this weekend, but the weekend before. Like I said, being the person in my family, not only in my small family, but my vast family, that's always been the protector of the family, the person who shows up for the family, who does all of these things for the family. That takes a toll. And this was even from a kid. I learned, I was talking to my mom, and like me and my mom, probably 80% of the arguments we've ever had was about someone else. And so the thought that came up was, who do I think I am? In the way of like, I'm not here to save anyone else. I'm here to contribute, but not save. And so it really took me inside. And the shorter version of it is save yourself. When you have the urge to reach out and be something or a savior or everything for someone else, I want you to stop and ask yourself, what is this triggering inside of me that I need to heal? When you want to tell somebody about themselves, when you want to show up for somebody that is taken away from you or upsetting you or shifting your frequency, ask yourself, what in this moment is coming up for me to heal? Because a lot of times we want to be everything for other people because we're running from healing ourselves. So we want to heal the world, but don't want to heal ourselves. So when you feel the desire to do so much for everybody else, just pause and say, what do I need right now? And what is coming up in this for me? And that's about really dropping down, going within. And one of the quickest ways is to really bring your awareness right. Like, look at your finger, bring all of your awareness right behind your eyelids, and close your eyelids. And just be fully aware that all of your awareness is right behind your eyelids. And then bring your awareness down to your heart space and just kind of follow it down slowly. Feel it going through your third. I mean, well, if it start here, it's going to go through your nose and it's going to go to your mouth. It's going to go to your throat. And it's going to go all the way down your chest, down to your heart space, just like right in the center of your heart. And just imagine like a beautiful lotus flower sitting there. And imagine your full body sitting in the middle of that lotus flower. And just kind of pull your shoulders back and imagine this is expanding that space for you so you feel fully comforted into your heart space. And this is really connecting to the highest version of yourself so you can get clarity in your thoughts and just say, what in this moment is meant for me to know? What do I need to see? What do I need to know? And if you hear something that doesn't make sense to you at that moment, don't say, oh, this is stupid, or oh, this don't make sense. Say, show me more or tell me more. Like, start to ask questions, start to have that dialogue with yourself that is like really allowing you to get the answers. Because a lot of times we hear something, and if it don't make sense, we'll be like, oh no, that's not it, or oh, why did I just think of that? You're like, okay, I don't understand, what is this telling me? Kind of play the show me tell me, show me tell me. Yes, give me more. And like, do more investigating instead of shutting down, because when you really are tapping into that deeper sense of self, there's a resistance that's going to happen at the beginning. And so just lean into the resistance with like, okay, this doesn't make sense. But instead of saying this doesn't make sense, say, well, whatever don't make sense about it, ask yourself, what don't make sense about this? And then ask the question to yourself, like, okay, well, if I don't understand, be like, okay, well, what is some ways that can help me better understand this? How does this relate to my everyday life? What is something that I can do to make this more tangible? Or can you explain it in a different way because it's not making sense? A lot of times it won't really happen that way to where it needs to be explained in a different way because your higher self has a deeper understanding of your understanding. But sometimes the resistance of you understanding it comes up. And so you understand it, but you don't want to understand it. So that's what, then still just play that show me, tell me game, because that's going to allow you to be able to get acquainted with the highest version of yourself, that higher frequency, to help you guide this human experience. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. And I'm going to use that. I know personally from experience as well as from studying that going inside is where all of the power is. It's where all of the magic lies. And every time something comes up, just living in that curiosity, I find for me helps get to that next level and that next layer.
Absolutely.
And where can our listeners find you?
So I have a podcast, Heal Out Loud, on YouTube. I would love it if you like what you hear here today, for you to like and subscribe to my channel. My website is Janine's Healing Clinic, and I'm on all the major platforms. So it would be lovely for you to drop by and visit. And I believe I might have a gift for you guys.
Yes. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. And I'm also going to have all of your contact information and your links and all of that in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to get a hold of Genine, check out the show notes, or like she said, find her on any of her socials.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you,
you guys.
Genine.
so much for listening in, and thank you so much for having me, Crystal. I really appreciate sharing this conversation with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate you showing up with your truth, your healing, and your heart. I
Yeah.
know that this conversation is giving so many women permission to stop hiding and step into who they are and start that healing, start that radical self-love.
Yeah.
To my listeners, if today's episode hit home for you, take a moment and breathe. Let it land. Before we wrap, like Genine said, she has something very powerful for you. She is sending you a free toolkit designed to help you get clear, own your power, and protect your peace. It's called Irresistibly Aligned. Discover your truth, take back your power, expand your heart. Do you want to talk about that just a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a couple of different quizzes and just instructions on those layers. Everything is about layers with me, though, because it's really important to understand the layers. And what I found in understanding the layers is once you break through the layer, it's always a next layer. And I want to make the layers an adventure because it really
Mm,
is. It's like, ooh, it's kind of like when you're playing the game. Ooh, I passed that level. Let me pass the next level. Just imagine if we had that enthusiasm about passing the next level in life instead of like, oh my God, another hurdle. Every level in a game is harder, but somehow we get addicted to it. What if we got
mhm,
addicted to healing that way?
mm.
What if we got addicted to self discovery that way? And that is it's a very beginner's guide to self discovery and that inner look within, that, oh, I never thought about that question, or that's a good way to look at it. So it's really that playful way of getting serious about knowing yourself. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So you can grab that toolkit again in the show notes. We will have that for you. And please share this episode with someone else who needs it. When you share the show, you're helping spread these conversations and build a community where healing isn't just personal, it's generational. Thank you again to Genine for sharing your energy and your time with us. And for those listening, remember you are never alone. You're doing the work not just for yourself, not just for generations to come, but for the woman you used to be when you didn't yet know she was allowed to rise.
Mhm.
That's why we talk about the taboo, because healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens when we feel, face, and speak the truth out loud. If you love this episode, share it, review it, tag me at I am Crystal Casey, and I'll see you next week for another real, raw, and rising taboo talk.
Woo! Take a breath. Because this isn't just about pushing through or keeping your head down. This is a season of stepping up, of making moves. And the move is breaking the pattern, choosing differently, learning to trust yourself enough to stop, recalibrate, and move with intention. Breaking cycles, not just for you, but for the generations that come after you. If this episode resonated, please send it to someone who needs it, because real conversations deserve to be heard. And if you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love for you to leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps us reach more people who are ready to step it up. Listen, if you're not just here to survive, but to build something real, whether it's in your life, your leadership, or your business, let's connect. Whether you want to work with me, book me as a speaker, or learn how to build a brand that actually aligns with your purpose, head over to crystalcasey.com/links. Everything you need is there. And remember, you were never meant to just keep going. You were meant to break the cycle, build something real, and reclaim your power. Keep leading, keep creating, and I'll see you back here next Tuesday.